Let the author get more older. Let the character to be forever young. Those are the lines written by Alexander Trifonovich Tvardovsky. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more in a moment. Hello and welcome to our 5 minutes with Ekaterina Russian poetry. Today we are talking about Alexander Tvardovsky and his poetry about the Great Patriotic War, or as it's called in more large scale, the Second World War. When I was preparing this video today, I thought so many times that we should never take our freedom of speech, our freedom of thoughts, our freedom of movement for granted. Because Alexander Tvardovsky in his life had to fit in this socialism regime, and his personal feelings and his personal tragedies at the time, they were great. And a lot of his fellow poets and a lot of his fellow authors, they experienced exactly the same in this beginning and middle of the 20th century. Despite Alexander was born in 1910 in a countryside in the family of a villager, and the family was quite poor, his father, working as a blacksmith, made it possible to buy a piece of land. And that was the ground for the family in 1918 to be so-called Raskulatina, which means that all the property was taken away and they were sent to Siberia. Young Alexander at the time didn't live with the family already because he moved to the neighboring city Smolensk, where he worked in the local newspaper and studied. He had somehow to fit into this reality when all the Soviet propaganda said that it is normal and that the rich people should give up their property in order to feed other people. And on the surface, he greeted it and he admitted that it's necessary, but his family tragedy, he had 4 brothers and 2 sisters, it was unspeakable, and we would never know what exactly he felt at the moment. But being working as a correspondent in the Soviet newspaper, being the part of the ideology, he couldn't even express his feelings. Before making this video, I watched a couple of other videos on YouTube about Alexander Tvardovsky, and in them the biographies were saying that his first poem was The Road to Socialism. Even nowadays in Russia, Russian propaganda says that his first poem published was The Road to Socialism, which is completely not true. And actually his first poem was completely different, and he, being a young person, was the more dedicated to the nature and more dedicated to the realism of to the everyday life. The real first poem which he published in the newspaper in Smolensk was The New House of a Villager, and nothing political was there. But even now the propaganda took this Soviet legend and gave it as a truth, and even now in the textbooks, in some textbooks at least, it is written that starting from the very early age and starting from the very beginning, he greeted the Soviet power and he greeted the new way of living. It is always hard to tell what did these people think really. From the one hand, Alexander Tvardovsky wrote so many patriotic and pro-Soviet poems, and from the other hand, if you read his best poems, they were dedicated to the war times, you would never see there any mention of Joseph Stalin, or you would never see there any mention of the party as the leader of these military events. Let's read together the part of the famous, the most famous poem, which is Василий Тёркин, and these lines are probably the most famous lines ever written about the Great Patriotic War. Василий Тёркин, «Переправа». Переправа, переправа, берег левый, берег правый, снег шершавый, кромка льда. Кому память, кому слава, кому темная вода, ни приметы, ни следа. Ночью первым из колонны, обломав у края лед, погрузился на понтоны первый взвод. Погрузился, оттолкнулся и пошел. Второй за ним. Приготовился, пригнулся, третий следом за вторым. Как плоты пошли понтоны, громыхнул один, другой, басовым, железным тоном, точно крыша под ногой. И плывут бойцы куда-то, притаив штыки в тени. И совсем свои ребята сразу будто не они. Сразу будто не похожи на своих, на тех ребят. Как-то все дружнее и строже, как-то все тебе дороже и родней, чем час назад. Поглядеть и впрямь ребята, как по правде желторот, холостой ли он, женатый, этот стриженный народ. Но уже идут ребята, на войне живут бойцы, как когда-нибудь в 20-м их товарищи-отцы. Тем путем идут суровым, что и 200 лет назад проходил с ружьем кремневым русский труженик-солдат. Мимо их висков вихрастых, возле их мальчишьих глаз смерть в бою свистела часто. И минет ли в этот раз? Налегли, гребут потея, управляются с шестом, а вода ревет правее под подорванным мостом. Вот уже на середине их относит и кружит, а вода ревет в теснине, жухлый лед в куски крошит. Меж погнутых балок фермы бьется в пене и в пыли, а уж первый взвод, наверно, достает шестом земли. Позади шумит протока, и кругом чужая ночь, и уже он так далеко, что не крикнуть, не помочь. И чернеет там зубчатый, за холодной чертой, неподступный, непочатый лед над черной водой. Переправа, переправа, берег правый, как стена. Этой ночи след кровавый в море вынесла волна. One of the poet's brothers during the war was a soldier, and he was captured, and just because of that, after the end of the war, he was convicted to 10 years in prison, and he was sent to Siberia, which also was one of the pieces of this personal tragedy and personal mishappiness of the poet himself. But you cannot really see it in his poems of the time of the early 50s, and they are mostly concentrated as before on the topic of the war. In his career at the time, we see the great leap forward. He is the chief editor of the popular newspaper at the time, which was paradoxically called the New World. In 1954, Tvardovsky, after this famous report of Khrushchev about the need of de-Stalinization, he decides that the freedom would be more wide in Soviet Union and the times are changing. So Tvardovsky for the first time tries to publish his critical poem, which was called Tёrkin in the Afterlife. And because of that, he was for the first time fired from the newspaper. He would regain this position in 1958, but not for a long time, because at the time the newspaper was quite liberal, and he even published Solzhenitsyn on its pages, which of course led to a new wave of discontent from the ruling ruling leaders of the party. And for the second time, he was fired from the newspaper, and at the same time, he got so much nervous that he had a microstroke. And in the hospital, after he was admitted there, they figured out that he had a lung cancer for a long time, which he never cured. And the very next year, the poet will die in Moscow. I want to read together another poem about the war. And again, you wouldn't see any mentioning of the party or of the political situation there. It's very simple, and it's about the everyday life of people and about the everyday situation. Дом у дороги. Я начал песню в трудный год, когда зимой студеной война стояла у ворот столицы осажденной. Но я с тобою был, солдат, с тобою неизменно. До той и с той зимы подряд в одной страде военной. Твоей судьбой я только жил, и пел ее до ныне, а эту песню отложил, прервав наполовине. И как вернуться ты не смог с войны жене солдатки, так я не мог весь этот срок вернуться к той тетрадке. Но как ты помнил на войне о том, что сердцу мило, так песня, начавшись во мне, жила, кипела, ныла. А я ее в себе берег, про будущее прочил, и боль и радость этих строк меж строк скрывая прочих. Я нес ее и вез с собой от стен родной столицы, вслед за тобой до самой заграницы. От рубежа до рубежа на каждом новом месте ждала с надеждою душа какой-то встречи, вести. И где бы ни переступал, каких домов пороги, я никогда не забывал о доме у дороги, о доме горестном, тобой покинутом когда-то. И вот в пути, в стране чужой, я встретил дом солдата. Тот дом без крыши, без угла, согретый по-жилому, твоя хозяйка берегла за 1000 верст от дому. Она тянула кое-как вдоль колеи шоссейной с меньшим, уснувшим на руках, и всей гурьбой семейной. Кипели реки подо льдом, ручьи взбивали пену. Была весна, и шел твой дом на родину из плена. Exactly such lines where you cannot lie about your feelings, when you express yourself and you show what is on your mind is characterized a genius poet, and they made the lines immortal. It is very easy to think or say what you would do if you would live in the regime which forbids you to think what you think. And it is very hard to live such a life in reality. Let me know your thoughts about it. What would you do, or what would you think you would do if you get into such situations in the life of your own? That was our poet for today. That was Alexander Tvardovsky. I'm always excited to read your comments, both about the biography and about the poem itself. Thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to my patrons on Patreon. That's how I can create more such videos and make them advertisement free. If you can, please consider supporting me there. If not, just subscribe for the channel, hit the bell button. That will help a lot, and that will show me that you like such videos. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you very soon. Goodbye for now.